Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hey, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the cult. I just want to do a quick show of hands. Who was in that Grace Thorpe stream that I just did? If you weren't there, don't worry about it. You didn't miss anything. But my God, like, it looks like I have some Grace people who have made their way over here. I don't know what follow-up you want, Rod. I don't think that's going to happen. Carlin W. Grace L. per usual. Apparently, Grace Thorpe is still seething from the stream we just did. That was fun. Oh yeah, that was quite a show. I was expecting her to fly off the handle at some point. I wasn't quite expecting it like that spectacularly, but that was like a nice little adventure into drama, as though I didn't have enough of that over the past couple weeks. That was fun. Yup, bot, you missed it. You need to go back and watch it. Ride was there. Nick was there. Rottweiler. John, I saw you in the chat. It was great. Yeah, I don't I particularly enjoyed the accusation that somehow Grace's father is more successful than me. I'm like, that's quite a claim. But you know what? We're not going to talk about that right now, because we have something so much more exciting to talk about. You guys are going to die at what we're watching today. So on the cult, we venture into the bowels of the far left and every crazy thing they're doing to the world. Everyone, welcome Evil Ghost. Thank you for joining us. Big Tech is on the stream now, really? Is he really on the stream now? Oh my god. What is he saying? My internet boyfriend is talking about me on her stream? Is that really happening? There he is! There he is! Oh my My internet boyfriend is talking about me right now over on that stream. That's funny. I'll have to watch that later. If you guys could like keep me updated on anything that goes on that stream, that would be great. Because we actually have important work that we need to do today. Vince says, I'm out at the moment, but the gentleman at the dispensary loved my real Marxism shirt enough to take a picture, so I may have made a sale for you. That's awesome, Vince. Vince has the red real Marxism shirt, which looks awesome. Oh god, I'm gonna have to review that later. Oh no. But guys, okay, can we focus? Everyone, focus. No more Grace Thorpe bullshit. Focus. Because guess what? We have today, this is possibly my favorite combination of things to exist in the dystopian bowels of the internet. And what I want to talk about, can we talk about fat trans activism? Because this is and not even trans, because we know it's not really trans, it's queer, right? We're not like, they called it trans, so I called it trans in the thing. Yeah, we're doing fat activism combined with queer activism combined with a taxpayer funded university, and this isn't even the only thing we're going to do off of this little find. So you guys know that, yeah, he is, isn't he? He really is. True. Very, 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 very true. Well, if she's still complaining about me, then I obviously won, because I've already moved on in my head to something far more interesting. So you guys know that my favorite sources of information on the far left are when we go into the bowels of the internet and we find these little centers that exist at like taxpayer funded universities. And these centers always have like 50 to 100 subscribers on their YouTube channel. And then you go into the YouTube channel and you start looking at some of their videos, and these videos have like 8 views, 10 views, maybe 100 views on a good day. And then you find the gold mine. And guys, I am so pleased to let you know that I found the fucking gold mine. I did. I found it earlier. There are so many videos from this channel that we have to watch. We have to watch all of them. This is the Midwest Institute for Sexuality and Gender Diversity. This is out of the University of Minnesota. Minnesota is one of the most woke socialist states in the country. It's like nearing Colorado levels of like woke socialism, which is a little bit weird. I don't know why exactly Minnesota ended up that way. But of course, because Minnesota is one of the centers of like socialist insanity, the University of Minnesota is especially a center of insanity, right? And so apparently, I've already, Chad, I've already done it. I'm way ahead of you. I already downloaded all their videos. So I found this little YouTube page with 50 subscribers. And the very first video I saw recommended to me on this page was Trans Fat. Lessons from large trans folks. And I was like, oh, please. Please. Yes, fat activism is if you have never ventured into the world of fat activism, you're in for a treat. Fat activism is one of the craziest things that is in the universe, because I'm not covering that type of news. I don't care. We're going to find out from other people. I don't care. I want to watch trans fat people talk about being trans and fat. But there's all sorts of other stuff on this channel too. Yes, it is the fat activists that are always the amateur porn stars. Like, trust me, take my advice on this. Don't go on any of these people's Instagram pages. Don't do it. Because inevitably on the Instagram page, there's going to be salacious photos And then you're going to find a Pornhub link at some point, and it's just going to take you, and you're going to see things that you cannot unsee. Every single fat activist is also an amateur porn star. I have seen things I cannot unsee. I have had images seared into my brain that can never be erased. But there's other stuff on this channel too. The literal debate for trans lives that was streamed 2 weeks ago. The next generation building liberated futures with queer and trans youth. The rise of a trans abolitionist vision. They've got so many goodies. So many goodies on this channel. So many goodies. But we have to start with the trans fat activism presentation because we have to. It's like the juiciest. Let's see. Oh, they don't even give me any details. Let's see if I can find details here. See, look, the Midwest Institute for Sexuality and Gender Diversity and the University of Minnesota Duluth Sexuality and Gender Equity Initiatives present the 6th annual Transgender Teach-In. What was this? Is the website still up? Can you guys see it? Yes. I hadn't even looked at this website yet. Oh my God. Oh my God. Look, details and bio. Let's see. On December 6, 2022, the Midwest Institute for Sexuality and Gender and the University of Minnesota Duluth Sexuality and Gender Equity Initiatives, let me pull that up for later, hosted the 6th annual Transgender Justice Teach-In. The 2022 Teach-In, Trans Fat, Lessons from Large Trans Folks, brought together all these people for a moderated conversation. Being fat and trans is an ethereal existence. But like most things that are joyful and magical, there are barriers intended to steal our pleasure. Panelists reflect on the unique position of fat and plus-size trans people to unearth lessons about desire, wellness, design, language, love, and much more. And they share stories about their lived experiences, observations of health and beauty practices that inhabit our livelihoods, and ways that fat and plus trans folks, that really should have an X in it, are reclaiming agency over their bodies. This is going to be great. We've got the panelist, Tristan. Tristan has, oh God, Z, Zer, and Zer's pronouns. Is a Black trans queer person residing in some Indian sounding name that is code for Sacramento. Tristan is the director of LGBTQIA Resource Center at another taxpayer-funded university, the University of California at Davis. All this other stuff. Has a bachelor's degree in Women's and Gender Studies from Eastern Michigan University, and will have Zier's Master's in Higher Education Administration from Stony Brook University. Dr. Jonathan Higgins, they, them, is an educator, professor, national speaker, and freelance journalist and thought leader and media critic. Let's see, where do they work? Dr. Higgins holds a doctorate in educational justice and regularly writes and lectures on what liberation means for Black, queer, fat, non-binary people. And then Shane, he, him, is a chubby queer trans man who calls the Midwest home. So that's what we are watching today, guys. Who's ready for trans fat activism? Is everyone excited? Please mount that like button for me. If you don't feel comfortable mounting the like button, if you don't feel like you've been well enough acclimated with the like button yet to mount it, you can give the like button a high five. You can put your arm around the like button, give the like button a kiss on the cheek, shake hands with the like button, do whatever dirty things you want to do to the like button, because God knows fat activism always equals amateur porn star, always. Every single time. So do whatever you got to do to the like button, guys. Just a couple orders of housekeeping before we get started. Number one, please do make sure that you are subscribed to my Substack, which is my main content hub on the internet. Despite what Grace Thorpe might think, my Substack actually gets more views than her father on any day of the week. And This is where I cover all my best stories from the left. It's where I do my independent journalism, undercover journalism, stuff like that. It's where I break down the woke ideology in plain English so that people can actually understand what's going on. You can, of course, subscribe for free to get updates and stuff like that. But if you do want to support the work I'm doing, because I am completely 100% grassroots funded by you, you can sign up for a membership for $8 a month, $80 a year. You get a whole bunch of perks when you sign up for a membership, including access to my private supporter call that we're going to be doing tomorrow at noon. And you can find the information about the private supporter call in this here post right here. And of course, I do appreciate everyone supporting my work. We are in a new year. I want to reach new levels to the Substack this year. I am this close. I'm so close. I am so close to getting my 1,000 paid subscribers on Substack to get me my bright orange verification check mark. Please help me get that orange verification check mark on Substack. Come on. This close, guys. This close. And while you're over there, you want to make sure you sign up for my my training that I have on January 24th. This is the How to Speak Socialist training. Now, I did this training last year. I did it last year. Where's my Rumble chat? There's my Rumble chat. Hi, everyone to watching on Rumble. There's the link here. So I did this training last year to basically, this is the crash course for learning the language of the left, learning how to speak socialist, where it's a great training. People in the chat saw it last time. I'm going to be updating the training with new clips. I learned a lot from doing the training the first time. People really enjoyed it. And if you're kind of new to me and you're new to watching socialism and the left, this is something that's going to be like your crash course, because we learn how to speak socialist through like immersion. It's kind of like if you don't speak French at all and then you pick yourself up and you put yourself in Paris and you say you're going to stay there until you learn how to speak French. You're going to learn how to speak French through immersion of being put in the middle of Paris and needing to function as an adult, right? It's the same thing with socialists. The best way to learn how to speak socialist is through immersion in the socialist experience. But if you find that overwhelming, which some people do, you can get a crash course on January 24th. I'm doing another live training where I'm going to be adding new clips. I'm going to be adding new information, all sorts of good stuff. This is 100% free. You don't have to pay for it, although if you want to make a donation, there is that option when you sign up. But I just want as many people learning as possible. Please share this link out with your friends and family, etc., etc., etc. And let's get a great audience. I had a great audience for the first one. I want another great audience for the second one. Really looking forward to it. That's coming up in a couple of weeks, and I hope I see many of you there. I also just want to remind people that another way you can support the work I'm doing, and to get one of these cool, badass Socialists Always Lie t-shirt that Grace Thorpe was like really offended that I was wearing a t-shirt on her stream. He was like, "You're fat and you're wearing a t-shirt." Well, yeah, I am wearing a t-shirt. My t-shirt is awesome. It says Socialists Always Lie, and you can pick up that t-shirt as well as many other t-shirts in the Unwoke Art store, which is unwokeart.com. And this is my merch store. I've got lots of cool stuff, including right now, just for the first week of the year, you can get the brand new Be an Anti-Hero design for 24% off. This is going to have our mascot of 2024, which is going to be a plague doctor. I'm really proud of this design. I think it's badass. I can't wait to get mine. You can get the Be an Anti-Hero plague doctor t-shirt right now for 24% off in the Unwoke Art store. You can also get a lot of other things as well, including the tumbler, which I'm expanding beyond the all tears are tasty tumblers to have some. And I got to tell you guys, I love these tumblers. They're so good. And so I definitely recommend them. They're really heavy duty. They get the job done. Lots of other stuff there as well. You can also, for this week only, get 24% off the Unwoke Wiki Plague Doctor design, which the Unwoke Wiki is a new project that I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to talk about that right now. But you can get that design also in the Unwoke Art store right now. And this all does go to fund the work I'm doing. And I really, really appreciate it. All right. Who's ready for some? Oh, by the way, one more thing before we get started. Of course, this is Tuesday, so this is not my last stream of the day. This is but my first stream of the day, and I will be live at 9:30 tonight to have a chat with Joshua for Nothing Remotely Controversial. If you've never been to Nothing Remotely Controversial before, this is our psychic time. This is our metaphysical time. This is a time when Joshua, who is a real live professional psychic in the real world, uses tarot cards and astrology to help us peer beneath the surface and figure out what's really going on in the world. Everyone loves Joshua. Everyone loves Joshua way more than me on an average day. And so if you want to come see us chatting, we are doing it at 9:30 tonight. And Joshua was so cute. Joshua and I had a meeting earlier today, and he said to me, he was like, Carlin, do you think that you can get to the stream by 9:15 tonight and we can have a pre-stream meeting? Because Joshua and I have been notorious lately for going live like 15 minutes after we're supposed to go live. And he was like, we're going to be responsible now. It's 2024. It's a new year. We're going to go live on time. And I was like, I was never the one keeping up the stream. It's usually Joshua who's keeping up the stream by not coming into the last minute. We're going to have a great time. All right, with that out of the way, let's get to the main event. The trans fat activism training. Now, I want to see the number of people mounting that like button. Come up, guys. There's a shocking disparity. I know that you're not mounting the like button for trans fat people, okay? That's not why you're mounting the like button. You're mounting the like button because you want to support my channel. You want YouTube to unshadow ban me. People are saying the stream is dead and now it's fixed. We're back. We're back. You guys can... Okay, stream is back. Excellent. So, guys, everyone, let's mount that like button and let's get this party started. We are watching Trans Fat Activism, courtesy of the University of Minnesota. Let's get this party started. We do just let them sit there, apparently, until they're ready to talk.
All right, I've got the signal that we're good to go. And since I have no sense of people loading into a live stream, since we're doing this on Zoom and folks are coming in via YouTube, we're just going to jump into this. So hey, hi, hello, everybody. My name is RB, or Rose with a Z. I use they, them pronouns. I am the Director of Programs for the Midwest Institute for Sexuality and Gender Diversity, as well as the Coordinator for Sexuality and Gender Equity Initiatives at the University of Minnesota, Duluth, where it is very cold and very snowy today. I want to welcome all of you wherever you are.
So she actually works at the University of Minnesota. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't misgender on this channel. They, them works at the University of Minnesota. Did everyone catch that?
To the 6th annual Transgender Justice Teach-In. The format for this event has looked a bit different in its 6 years, but the whole purpose every year has been centering the knowledge, experiences, and liberation of trans, non-binary, and intersex people. And so we are continuing that objective today. For the past 3 years, the Teach-In has been a partnership between my office at UMD as well as the Institute, pretty much prompted by COVID when everything went virtual, and with the resources and opportunity we had at the Institute to be able to offer a virtual webinar panel style.
See, people want to call me fat on the internet, but like, I mean... I don't, I just, like, maybe it's because I watch fat activists, but like, I really just don't think that, like, being that I wear normal clothes and like stuff like that, I don't think I hold a candle in fat to these beautiful queer fat activists who we would never besmirch on YouTube. I just don't think it's a fair comparison. I just cannot exceed to their levels.
Format, we have been continuing that model for the past 3 years, which has actually kind of opened up more opportunity for folks literally across the nation to chime into this conversation and participate. So I'm super excited about continuing that partnership and bringing folks together that maybe wouldn't have gotten in the same room otherwise. Yeah, so let's see here. So I want to chat about why this topic today, right? So part of it is selfishly, as a fat NB.
Hang on. Got a super chat from Tayton. Tayton says, the learning curve for understanding non-binary and queer is quite tough for average people. Even most LGBT folks don't understand it because solidarity. That's very, very true. There's still a lot of LGBT folks that are self-identifying as queer because they haven't yet understood that queer is not about being gay. It's not about being trans. It's not about your genitals. It's not about what's between your legs. It's not about who you have sex with. It's not about who you love. It's not about any of that. Queer is only and exclusively a far left political ideology in the way that these people use the language, and normal people haven't caught up with that yet, but you know, eventually they will. Eventually they will.
Person, I thought we deserved to have this conversation. And so I got going on thinking about how to curate a really intentional conversation with other trans plus size fat folks, however, whatever language folks use, which we'll get into. And it also felt vital in this moment, thinking about just everything that's going on, whatever the everything for you is, right? To kind of come together in our shared context of an ongoing global health pandemic that has revealed so much about our healthcare systems and related systems.
So remember, this was about a year ago. So it's not like we were still dealing in like pandemic times last year. But remember, socialists still think to this day we're in a pandemic. And so that's why she brought that up.
We'll get into that too. Thinking about continued mass protests related to a variety of injustices, such as police violence, student loan debt, pandemic responses, and a slew of other things on a very large and also localized scale. And also just the continued rapid fire legislative attacks on trans folks that just feels almost like a daily occurrence at this point because it's so nonstop. And so just holding all of that in this context of, you know, who do we defer to? Who can we extract lessons from? Who knows a thing or two about how to guide and lead and give direction in this moment that overlaps with a lot of issues that touch all of us related to mental health, health and wellness, fashion, function, design, desire,
little over a year
all
ago.
of these things, right? Well, it's fat, trans, and NB folks that know a thing or two about these things. And so
NB, so NB is non-binary. Now, NB could be NB as in just like the initials non-binary, but I've actually seen a lot of non-binary folks, FOLX, use this word. So you might see this pop up places, NB, like NB, like, or like it's something like that. So if you see some sort of like weird derivation of non-binary, that's kind of a thing they're doing. I don't really understand why.
So this is why the focus is on that intersection. And I am so jazzed about the folks that I get to share space with today to tuck into that. Before I get into having our panelists introduce ourselves, I did want to add as a housekeeping note for folks watching the live stream today that you are able to drop questions in the chat whenever you feel fit. We will build some time in to answer any like longer form questions that you have for panelists towards the end of our planned conversation. But over the course of the conversation, if there's language or acronyms perhaps that we use that you're not clear on, you can drop those clarifying questions in the chat and our moderators will work on getting you a quick answer. And if there's not a quick answer, we'll tuck it towards the end. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to have folks introduce themselves with who you are, what are some things that you do, and then also if you can share a story, that a brief story, because we have, you know, plenty of time, but only so much time, and it's going to go fast, that illustrates either how you discovered that fat isn't a bad word, or you know, a time that you gave yourself permission to exist fully in your fatness. Whoever would like to start, go for it.
Tristan, you start.
Tristan is the Z.
Why did I feel like that was going to happen? Hi, hello. My name is Tristan or TK. I respond to either. My pronouns are Z, Zir, and Zirs. I am currently the director of the LGBTQIA Resource Center at the University of California, Davis. I know that my team is currently watching, so hi, hello.
Taxpayer funded by the good people, the good communists of California.
What else do I do in life? I'm just vibing. I'm just vibing. I'm also a soon-to-be graduate of a master's degree from Stony Brook University, which I'm also very excited about.
Look.
So yeah,
They them has the socialist tattoos. I keep telling you guys, socialists have these weird black and white, like really bad black and white tattoos that are just like random. Look, you're always gonna see this now. Bad black line tattoos.
think for me, like the first time that I realized that like fat wasn't like a bad word was I think like was a very specific cultural context. So like my mother was born and raised in the Midwest. My dad was born and raised in the deep South, specifically Greenwood, Mississippi. And so I knew from a young age that like being fat wasn't a bad thing. It was more seen as like a sense of pride and a sense of wealth. I didn't realize that at the time because I lived in a tiny little Midwestern little town, and got very much
It's a good idea,
what's the
Bot.
word I'm looking for?
Good call.
I saw a different view than what my family was viewing, right? But I had a lot of folks in my life that were like, yeah, this is fine, but I had to work through it, like, you know, as a young Black woman at the time that was discovering my identity. But I would say fully that I'm able to like exist.
Black woman, people who said woman was
when
right.
I got top surgery in 2017.
Well
first I was
done
like,
to everyone who said trans.
I don't know if I like this, but I went to a surgeon that specifically knew that I couldn't have the same body type as like a thin person when getting surgery. And it was probably one of the most affirming moments in care, which I will talk about a little bit more later. But I thought it was really great. And now I'm engaged and I'm planning a wedding. And I went to a plus size bridal store and found a dress. And it was also a very affirming moment. And so I feel like those are like some instances because now I'm like, yeah, this is fine. I'm fat, I'm trans, I'm queer, it's great. And now I feel that it's just been a culmination of like my experiences. But those are just some little tidbits. So yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
So I guess I'll go next. Yeah, so Shane's clapping, so I'm like, hey. So with that being said, hi everybody who is watching near and far. My name is John, also known online as Dr. John Paul. A little about me, I like to say that I am I'm the person that loves to come into the room and shake the table, honey. But no, really, I love to kind of my moniker and the thing that I've been using kind of to explain what I do is I always like to say I'm writing / creating the things my ancestors didn't get to. And so really thinking about the ways, how do I use my voice and my experiences and my knowledge and my education to really amplify other voices. So whether that be in media, whether that be in the classroom, I teach full time. I also write. I am currently on contract with Primetimer. We'll be covering a whole bunch of different shows and we're in talks to do a bunch of different things. So I'm always everywhere. And sometimes I feel like nowhere at the same time. But all that to be said, you know, kind of what I think for me, kind of what really shaped kind of this whole, wow, girl, you just really need to love you and your body, you know, at the same time. So back, I think it was actually in 2018, I was going through the process with Kaiser to get bariatric surgery. And I did the 10 classes and I had almost finished. And when I got to my 9th class, you know, this is the class where you start talking to the actual person who's going to be doing your surgery. I was actually starting to come into like my non-binary transness at the same time too. I was starting to play with more, you know, feminine clothes. I was getting my nails done. I was starting to wear more makeup. I was doing a lot of things to really just kind of embrace the idea that femininity wasn't a bad thing. And as I was having the conversation with, you know, the person who was getting ready to do my surgery,
transness, the idea of men embracing that femininity is not a bad thing. It's almost like these people are just totally adherent to all gender stereotypes that they claim they abhor.
Surgery, the way that he kept talking to me was as if you know, we got to be careful that you're going to put the weight back on. You got to be careful that, you know, this, and it just felt like it didn't feel like they believed that I would be able to successfully stay thin. And then there became this conversation in my own head.
Marie Antoinette never said this. This is a lie. This is a myth. Marie Antoinette never said, let them eat cake. That's not true.
Who are you doing this for? And I really had to sit with that. At that time, I had just really started to break into media. I was in rooms with a lot of thinner people. I had companies wanting to work with me that were telling me very openly, we don't make anything in your size. There were all of these different things. And I just said, this is a lot. And
it was propaganda created at the time for I've actually studied this. I did actually study, like, Marie Antoinette was like, I was a little obsessed with Marie Antoinette for a while. Look it up. I'm not lying. It was propaganda created at the time because they wanted a revolution.
I'm not happy in this process. And I think that was kind of the first, window. So when they called to schedule my surgery, I just told them to cancel it. I said, I'm actually okay. I'm going to go ahead and cancel the surgery. I don't want to do it. And they were like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I'm very sure. And ever since that day, I think it really helped. Those 10 classes really helped me understand. It's so interesting because, those classes are supposed to teach you how to eat better and how to take care of yourself. And all 10 classes are just the classes of hatred. They really affirm and push this idea of fat phobia.
Diet classes are classes of hatred. Can we go back and listen to that again? That was awesome. Hang on, we're gonna have to go back a little bit. Classes of hatred.
It didn't feel like they believed that I would be able to successfully stay thin. And then there became this conversation in my own head. Who are you doing this for? And I really had to sit with that. At that time, I had just really started to break into media. I was in rooms with a lot of thinner people. I had companies wanting to work with me that were telling me very openly, we don't make anything in your size. There were all of these different things. And I just said, this is a lot. And I'm not happy in this process. And I think that was kind of the first, window. So when they called to schedule my surgery, I just told them to cancel it. I said, I'm actually okay. I'm going to go ahead and cancel the surgery. I don't want to do it. And they were like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I'm very sure. And ever since that day, I think it really helped. Those 10 classes really helped me understand. It's so interesting because, those classes are supposed to teach you how to eat better and how to take care of yourself. And all 10 classes are just the classes of hatred. They really affirm and push this idea of fat phobia. And that's what I walked away from that experience with. I was like, wow.
Exactly, Stephen. Exactly. They're evil because capitalism created dieting programs. This is why you're not allowed to talk about dieting programs or going to the gym or anything like that on the internet, or else someone's going to accuse you of being fat phobic. Capitalism created dieting programs, which caused hatred towards fat people. And therefore all dieting is bad and all dieting programs are bad and the gym is bad and all of these other things. It's all because of capitalism.
These classes are not teaching me how to love myself or be one with my body. They're teaching me to hate me and to be even more like to police my body in a way. And I said, well, I'm already being policed as a trans, as a non-binary trans person. Why would I want to do this in this process too? So I think that for me really kind of opened my eyes. And that's when I really started writing about my journey to loving my body and really helping other people. And as you all know, now I have a podcast that I talk about it very openly and things of that nature. But all that to be said, I think that experience, specifically is what really helped me kind of garner what true fat phobia looks like and how it's pushed and how it starts within the medical industry.
Mm-hmm. That was a word, John. And I think just thank you for sharing that story and trusting vulnerability in the space. I think that's hard to do. And I think I'm just very grateful for hearing that. And, I'm happy to introduce myself. My name is Shane Smore. I use he, him, his pronouns.
Shane Smore.
And, a little bit about me is I started Plus Size Trans Guy. I was like, do I talk about my work as a recruiter? I'm an HR professional. I do recruitment, but don't want to talk about that. I want to focus a lot on Plus Size Trans Guy and the work that I do in that space. And I live in the Midwest. I identify as a trans masculine person, a queer person. I am married for just a little over a year. I've got 2 cats. I'm a cat dad, and I'm fat and I'm plus size. And I'm still learning to love that about myself. But I think it's a lifelong journey about acceptance and radical acceptance about a body and how we navigate our world in a body. But this question really threw me off, RB, because I was like, oh my gosh, it was like one story, one pinpoint. I was like, how do I think about my journey as like a 30-year-old fat trans person who is white and queer and navigate all of that into a space of how did I learn to be where I'm at? And I can't really, TK, I was so grateful you shared what you shared, because I couldn't think of a time where I really learned that fat isn't a bad word. I think I never thought fat was a bad word until I started to have to fight or push back against what health practitioners were telling me, what fashion was telling me, what friends and beauty standards and all of these other things were telling me. And it's still at that point, I never thought it was bad. I was just like,
Well, this is actually a great point. So why are they pretending this? Let's do this as a pop quiz for the chat. I want to hear what you guys have to say and get your opinion on it. Why are they pretending to be happy that he's married if marriage is a patriarchal and oppressive institution? That's a great question, Gold Becoming. What do you guys think? I have a guess, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Well, while you're typing in your answers, I'm going to grab this super chat from Rottweiler. I wonder how would fat queers rationalize the recent news about high-profile fat activists and celebrities recently passing away from weight-related diseases, none being above the age of 35? That's a great question. They would probably, you know what they would do, Rottweiler? They'd blame it on capitalism because capitalism has denied them universal health care. And if we just had universal health care, then they would have had all the care that they needed and they wouldn't have died, is what I would bet. Okay, so let's go back to our question from Gold Becoming. Why are they pretending to be happy that he's married? Marriage is a patriarchal and oppressive institution. What do you guys think? He's in a queer marriage. That was what I was thinking, Stephen. That's what I was thinking. I think they're happy because that person's marriage is queer. I think so. They're supportive of him because leftists are always communal. That's another great point, Milo. They went out of the binary in the marriage because there's a good chance this person's marriage is likely polyamorous and therefore they're queering the marriage. Exactly. Oh, it could also be performative happiness. There's some truth there, Rottweiler. Absolutely. So a queer marriage is anything that's not hetero or homonormative. So if you're like in a polyamorous relationship, if you're like, having some family of choice thing, like that's going to be queering the marriage. There are all sorts of ways. I mean, I think they're going to come up with some really creative ways to queer the marriage that we haven't even thought of yet. We'll see.
why am I always having to push against these pieces that I never thought I had to? And it's just like a constant battle. And I think it wasn't until I started Plus Size Trans Guy and really started getting connected with more people in the fat community and the plus size community to really understand the politicalness of what it means to be fat
actually,
and how to navigate and
it would be. Yeah.
fat as a bad word. So that isn't a story, but I will share why I started Plus Size.
But they would also be considered like way too religious for them, and like, so maybe not quite, but I think it's on the right train of thought.
As trans guys, because I came out as trans when like Tumblr was the way and the truth and the life about how you learned about queerness and transness. And I remember just looking on Tumblr trying to read people's stories, and I was like, I don't see anybody that looks like me. I saw a lot of white trans people, and I can relate to that experience, but I saw so many thin people sharing their journey about surgery, about hormones and their pictures. And I was like, I'm never going to look like that. I've never looked like that. I'm not going to look like that. And that is not my truth. And I really struggled to find myself in the trans community at first. And then I started recognizing kind of this intersection of like transness and fatness, probably about 2 years into my transition, where people were like, wow, you're really fashionable. You're stylish.
Also true, Tayton.
You really know what
Also
you're
true.
doing when you put together an outfit. And I was like, why are you so surprised? Why are you so shocked all the time? Like, can fat people not be fashionable? Can trans people not be fashionable? Can masculine people not be fashionable? And just all of those intersections. And I said, I'm going to start Plus Size Trans Guide to create a space that I never had. And it wasn't.
Well, okay, so Rottweiler says, I have a question though, since they have yet to mention capitalism, would that make them true believers or useful idiots? Rottweiler, I promise you, before this presentation is over, someone's going to mention capitalism. I promise you. Like you can set a watch based on this because it's so predictable that capitalism will come up at some point. But I would say these are definitely true believers. These are queer activists. This is like no joke. Queer activists are always true believers to the ideology, and these are not just like any sort of queer activists. These are people who have like literally like changed their body. So these are hardcore committed queer activists. So I don't think they're useful idiots. I think they're true believers.
I never thought it would reach the amount of people that it did. I really did it as an opportunity for me to normalize and accept my body and my fashion and showcase that and provide resources and support to maybe my friends in the community and the people. And I took a topless binder photo in a little Speedo many moons ago, and it took off and it's kind of come to be what it is. And I take that responsibility really seriously because I feel like it was the first opportunity where we started to create a space, and I created with so many people and help to say it is okay to be fat and trans, and it is okay to show your body and to accept your body and be in your body as a fat, queer, and trans person. And so, that is the story that I think about how I came to be where I'm at as who I am today.
It's just incites so many like emotions at the same time, just like affirmation, but just also just kind of like frustration, just because there's so many. The quote I just wrote down, like in thinking about, especially like John, your story, and Shane, yours as well, but just ultimately across the board experiences that like the things being mirrored to us is a lie, right? Like the things that we are told or the things that we're supposed to see and consume as like, well, this is the goal, this is the aspiration, right? Whether it's surgery regarding weight, or it's surgery regarding transness, or it's depictions on social media, right? Like what is being mirrored back to us is ultimately a lie, and that to pursue that lie is also really faulty.
Do you guys want to take bets on who's gonna say the word capitalism first? Let's like put a number in the chat. We're gonna go RB they them for number 1, Tristan Z Zares as number 2, Shane S'mores he him as number 3, and Dr. John Paul they them as number 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Put your prediction in the chat about who's gonna say the word capitalism first.
And I think that just is this really unfortunate undergirding factor from what I'm hearing from like these stories, but also that there's this inherent kind of pleasure and sigh of relief that comes with realizing that the mirror is a lie, to say that like I don't need that, and actually I can see past that because I can actually see myself in the weird little fractals of this broken mirror that you're trying to show me. Love a metaphor. So just like I'm feeling just really just kind of like just so there's just goosebumps happening already, and we are 20 minutes in. So just again, thank you. I don't ask simple questions. I really like to get into the depth of things pretty quickly. And so I know that question was probably a hard bite, and something that just we don't maybe are prompted to think about all that often either, just because we don't get to talk about fatness like all that often either. So just like all the things. So I wanna kind of go down the pathway of what in many ways y'all have kind of already started to touch on, with kind of the intersections of just gendered experiences and pursuit of like, what does femininity mean? What does masculinity mean? What is gender, right? Like just what are these things for us? And I had a question that I posed to y'all in advance of this that is inspired by an essay from an anthology called Fat and Queer, which I so highly recommend. And the essay is by Caleb Luna, and it is titled "The Gender Nonconformity of My Fatness," which just as a title is like, hello. And in the essay,
The gender
Caleb talks
nonconformity of my
about
fatness.
how their fatness arrests.
That's actually fucking brilliant though. Can someone look that up? Bot, can you look that up, please? The gender non-conformity of my fatness. So let's just really think about this for a second instead of like making fun of it. So queer Marxists, right? Their goal is to abolish the gender binary. They don't want there to be men or women. They want an entire world full of they, thems, or in this case, z, theirs, right? And so if you're saying that fatness is gender non-conformity, you're literally saying that being fat is a way to abolish the gender binary. So therefore being fat is like a virtue in the land of queer Marxists. Thank you, Bot. Bot looked it up. We'll look into that later. Appreciate it.
Their gender, and also talks about these interactions with other people that were problematized by strangers.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Adrian. Fatness is queerness because they are both oppositional to the normal.
Assumptions about their gender based on their body size and shape. And so I'm curious for y'all.
Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. I wasn't going to do this, but you guys have got to see this. You guys have got to see this website. Hang on. You've got to see this. Check this out. Bot, our stealthy researcher as always. Look at the cover of this. Am I even allowed to show this on YouTube? Our book has arrived. Check it out. Hang on. We'll go in. I want to see the cover of the book. Oh, look at all the places. Oh my God. New York Times, USA Today, New Yorker, Huffington Post. Wow. Oh my God. Why not being racist isn't enough. She was on CBS News. The difference between being not racist and being anti-racist on CBS News. So now we're getting, I just want to see the cover of the book. I literally just want to see the cover of there it is. There it is. That's what I wanted to see. She's a beautiful butterfly. Hey man, no shade. If you listen, I actually have like and I told you, by the way, did I not tell you guys that every fat activist in the history of fat activists are also amateur porn stars? It is inevitable every single time. I will say though, I have to give it to people who are willing to pose naked for pictures. Like you've got some balls, figuratively in this case, to post naked and to post naked for a picture on the cover of your book. You have to give some credit, man. You really do. Well, yeah, I think that we're figuring this out, Milo, is that the fat acceptance movement is a part of queer Marxism because being fatness, which is like literally what this book is about queering the gender binary. All right. We can look more into that later. Let me go back to the video. I mean, you can have both. Like you can, guys, you can give credit where credit is due to people without liking them. You don't have to demonize everything. You don't have to vilify everything. Oh, goodness. Indeed. Sorry, Jackie.
In what ways does your fatness interplay with your gender? Again, simple questions.
In what ways does your fatness
I think I'll
interplay with
start.
gender?
I think, And I do want to acknowledge, I know I see one of the questions, and when we get through these questions, I'll answer the question that I saw come through. I just wanted to make sure that folks don't feel like I'm skirting past that question that came up in the box. With that being said, kind of going back to your thought, this notion of arrest and problematize, the only thing I can think about is, I have these two very flowy, I don't know what I want to call them. They're kind of like caftans. And I notice when I wear them, how people's response to me is, yes, girl, like work, you look good. Oh, even like, it's just, it's very interesting how I don't think people recognize that they're microaggressions, but they are. The way people, treat you in terms of like looking at you in terms of policing what restroom you go into when you have on something that's more feminine, right? The idea that sometimes I'll go to do things and I can see people looking at my nails, right? Like this idea of folks not being able to place me, if that makes sense. And I think, specifically too, like when I'm in like a Kohl's and I'm in the plus size section and I'm looking at, a sweater, or I'm looking at a shirt, right? You can see women looking like, why is this, quote unquote gentleman in the women's area, right? And it's like, why don't you just mind your business since you're not paying for it? But I say all of that to say that I just think that, it kind of all comes back down to this notion of, and we talk a lot about this in all of the facets of our work. The binary has really put so many people in these very, very insular boxes. And I think that when you start looking at fatness, right, and even thinking about the clothes that are made for fat people, whether it be gendered or not, the idea, and I love that you mentioned this, Shane, right? It's so interesting when people go, you look so good. And it's like, what, I was not supposed to as a big girl? Like, what are you trying to insinuate when you make that claim that, oh my God, girl, you look so good? Like, what am I supposed to do? Wear sweats? I just think that there's so many ways. And I think, I kind of go back to this, right? I think that there's this notion of, I heard someone say this / tweet this, and then I'll throw it to you all. Someone had said, I always get offended. It was a bigger person had said, a bigger trans person. They said, I always get so offended when people say, you look so beautiful, as if I'm not supposed to feel beautiful because of my size or because of who I am as a trans person. And so I think that's the arrest, right? There's this connotation, this ideology that bigger people, whether they be trans or not, are not supposed to be happy with who they are because society has made it feel like / seem like we're never supposed to be happy people. And, I don't know about y'all, but I'm always, if even on a bad day, I'm still having a good day, right? And so I think that's the thing. Like, I just feel like there's this question that always kind of sits behind us. Why do you have the audacity that you have to love yourself, both as a trans person and as a queer person and as a trans queer fat person, right? Like, why? And I think media plays a big role in that.
Again, the word amazing. This reminds me actually, so I sometimes dabble in content creation.
You don't say.
When I mean sometimes,
You
I
don't
actually do
say.
mean sometimes, because I think like the last post I made on TikTok was like 2 weeks ago after not posting for like 7 months. But I have what I considered a viral video. To other people it's not, but to me it is. But it was a viral video of me showing off my top surgery scars because another fat trans person had never seen someone who is fat that got top surgery, right? And got it while they were fat, right? And most of the comments were like really positive, but they were all along the lines of like, oh my God, you're really brave for doing this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I get the sentiment. And going back to what John Paul said, it's like, why am I brave for doing this? Like, why is this a thing?
You're
like,
not.
I'm just, honestly, I'm doing the bare minimum. Barely that. And I think it's really interesting because especially my contacts of like I not only was like in like see policing of like my body as like a Black trans person, but I saw it as a fat Black woman. And so that is something that is also like a part of my journey that I'm rediscovering. I'm like, yes, I'm trans, and I also like have these.
For those of you who did the National Sex Ed Conference infiltration with me, there was a whole or for those of you who weren't there, rather, because those of you who were there know, but there was a whole presentation about like Black female bodies and how Black female bodies are like objectified under the system of capitalism. And I bring that up because Tristan Z Zers is talking about when Z was still a she her, and how the former and how, well, I guess I got to say Z Zers now because it's like the present time pronouns, how Z Zers was objectified when Z still had a she hers body.
In-depth experiences as a Black woman, right? And for me, it was really like both of them seem very different in how it was. Like I was seen like I was basically told to make myself shrink a lot of the time, whether that was personality wise, whether that was my physical presence, what have you. And I'm like, I'm not that type of person. Even at a young age, it's what I was just a loud, bombastic little kid, right? But it played out in the sense of like how like the world viewed me, even though I didn't view myself that way, and let a lot of that influence kind of take me over, as well as how hard it is for fat folks in general, but especially fat trans folks to find that sense of like self-love, and being able to be like, yes, like I'm gonna walk through this world and be grand. Also really quick commenting on like the fashion side of it, trying to find clothes, like knowing the fact that most of us, we have to buy all of our clothes online. We're supposed to be hidden. We're not supposed to be in public, like a public figure, like any of these things. And I think that like John Paul, like you said about like media and all of that, it plays a part, as well as the cultural implications within various communities as well. And so I think this whole thing is like really interesting. And I'm like, hi, I'm here. You know, I'm gonna exist, and you don't want me to wear this cute little crop top, and I'm going to, and it doesn't matter because it's my body. So I don't know why you're caring. Even if it's like we wear the bare minimum, the folks are just like, this is like the most revolutionary thing. I said, girl, I just bought this at Target like 2 days ago. Like, you know, it's fine. Or, oh, this is just something I picked up off of my floor, and I was like, it's good enough. I'll just wear it out. It's fine. But I feel like it's this sense of like, we're supposed to be invisible, and we're supposed to move within the shadows and not be seen as our full selves within all of this, which I'm like, A, we shouldn't do that, and B, like that's not reality. Like we're going to exist whether you like it or not. And for me, I'm just like, you know, I'm not gonna yuck your yum. Don't do it to me. You know, it's a good grand time.
I just think a pause for that, TK. That was so good. And there are so many things just kind of flooding my thought process from just this is such a healing conversation for me. I'm just so grateful to be in this space with you. And I think for many of us, these conversations feel so isolated. I think like we're the fat person in the friend group, or we're the trans person in the friend group.
So people are talking about like, if these are collectivists, then why are they so obsessed with themselves? Well, here's the thing, guys. Have you seen any one of them contradicting anyone else? Or have you seen them be totally and completely affirming of the other people and snapping when people say they're married and stuff like that? So you can exist as an individual, kind of like in terms of like, if you're talking about, here's what it is. If you're talking about making your identity as queer as possible, then in queering your identity, you are being of service to the collective, because in queering your identity, you are doing your part to show your commitment to the queer ideology and to abolish the gender binary. but they're still being affirming of each other. They're already talking about affirming, and this is so healing and stunning and brave and all this stuff. Like, they're never going to question each other. They're never going to contradict each other. They're never going to be anything other than like completely nice to each other. It's proof of their unity under the socialist consciousness. Exactly.
Or we're the fat trans queer person in the friend group, and those experiences can feel so isolating. So it's just healing to be in this presence for so many reasons. And so when TK, something that you said just stood out to me about the fact of we're not supposed to exist. When I think about arrest, confinement, when I think about people's comments on our bravery, on our existence, on our shocking beauty and fashion and presence, I think about we are not supposed to be here. And I think that says so much about our perseverance when we haven't had to be, or when we shouldn't have to be, our resilience when we shouldn't have to be. And I think, our existence breaks that arrest for whatever they're trying to place on us. Another piece that really came up for me was a piece of passing, right? And I think around transness and queerness, but particularly transness, there is a pressure for valid reasons for a lot of people, specifically, I would say Black femme trans women, or femme people, non-binary femme people. There's an essence of survival, but I think there's a real pressure from that comes to this idolized idea of what society expects a man to be or a woman to be. When you come in as trans, there's this pressure to meet that 100%, probably 110% more than what you navigate, when you come out as, or before you come out as trans. And I think about, for me, the minute I came out as trans, people were like, oh, you're going to be in the gym. You want to be a fit guy. You want to do all of these things. You're going to wear like a lumberjack plaid and chop down a tree and be fit. And whatever those people on TikTok, when they squish watermelons with their thighs, they're like, that's going to be you. Maybe I'd rather be the watermelon on some cases, but not the person doing other things. But my point around that being is there's this real pressure to not be how you are. There's a pressure to like be on this journey to be something else and something that is harmful. And I think or can be harmful depending on who you are. And in a lot of ways, I think we see our health providers, like I talked about, or strangers, or people who try to put this confinement on how we're supposed to be and use health or use well-being or use desire or use these other pieces of our everyday life really as weapons against us, of like, you won't achieve, you won't do these things because you're fat and you're trans. And I think about how that impacted my journey as a trans person. I felt the need to really look like this fit, flat-chested, buff, white trans guy when I came out. And that was a lot of the pressure that I felt. And I think as I've gotten older, I'm coming up on almost 9 years on testosterone, which is like a wild piece of my journey. But nowadays, particularly around the pandemic, and since I've been at home, I'm like, I don't want to wear a binder sometimes. So I'm like, I'm going to go out to the grocery store. And what does it mean to have like a lumpy chest as a trans person, as like a trans masculine person, and to not wear a binder and to not feel like I have to be bound and flat to be valid as a trans person. But I'm always weighing, I feel like it's a constant weigh of pros and cons, right? I go to the grocery store and I'm like, I don't feel like wearing a binder, and like, this is my chest as it is, and it is a trans chest, it is a man's chest, it is a masculine chest, but I'll be grabbing like my chia seeds and I'll see somebody looking at my chest, if I have like a low cut shirt on or a zip up, and I ultimately think about, what does that mean for how people perceive me in the space? What does that mean for my safety? What does that mean for what people are reading about me? How are people perceiving me? And sometimes that can be internalized, or sometimes it's very real. And I think, who's to say just because it's internalized, it's not real for us? And so I think, I don't know, that doesn't really land on a point, but I think as I've continued my journey as like a fat trans person, I've started to really break apart all of these confines around passing, around what a body is supposed to look like as a trans person. What is a body supposed to look like in general? And what does it mean to just exist with starting to learn what your body needs and giving it to it and finding acceptance in how your body is in that space? And so those are little pieces of how it's interplayed with gender. I know that, it doesn't land on a firm point that you might want, RB, but I hope it drops a little bit of gems there.
I want whatever you will give me. So I have no, that was splendid. I'll add, just because I am here too and I have thoughts, that I think that piece that especially you, Shane, named, but ultimately everybody named, like this, the perception of other people. And I think it's wild that like those folks don't think we know, right? They don't think we know at the moment. And they also don't think we know that like every space we enter, we're taking that inventory, we're kind of feeling it out for those looks, those lingering eyes, right? So I think about my experience as someone who is also in a relationship with a fat trans person,
Oh
and
my
how
God.
that interplays so much with folks' perception of what the arrangement of our relationship is, right? And so depending on the space, I'm also, in addition to being fat, I'm also very tall. My partner is quite a bit shorter than I am. He's generally a more smaller framed person. And depending on spaces we're in, his
Really? I
queerness
want to
can
see
get very
pictures.
easily erased based on folks' perception of him, and also if he's with me, and vice versa. If we're in primarily cishet spaces, my queerness and my gender can get erased or reconfigured
I want
in
to see
those
this
spaces. And
person's
so it's kind of this
Instagram right
perpetual
now.
weird pendulum of kind of trying to coexist as two people who have our own respective
Hang on.
complexities around our bodies and our fatness and our queerness and our transness. But then you put the two of us together and it just creates a whole nother like shit show of just gender fat fuckery that just like folks cannot figure.
Hey, bot or anyone, can someone find this person's Instagram, please? RB Brooks. I want to see their they them queer romance.
Out, and it gets really complicated. In fact, like he'll tell folks, who have never met me, oh, blah blah blah, my partner, and they automatically assume that he's with a man, right? Just like without ever having met me, right? And so just the ways that folks will go through these mental gymnastics to kind of place and push because they can't configure, and just thinking about how much not only does the gender expression play into that, but how the size and shape of your body and the fatness of your body just really, really contributes to that as well. And I think about how it can get messy.
If anyone else finds the Instagram faster than Bot does, then they replace Bot as the chief investigative officer of the cult. This is now a competition.
Especially in trans spaces where there is oftentimes, in my opinion, right, this overeager push for trans, like biomedical transition, that the assumption is that, well, if you have dysphoria, you can fix it by modifying your body, right? For some folks, that's entirely true, and it's life-saving and it's valid. And right, the conversation around it and sometimes the overemphasis on it can get really messy, especially for like non-binary folks who have no interest in biomedical transition. And I worry that in addition to that, what message does that also send to fat trans people to say, well, if you're unhappy with it, if your dysphoria or dysmorphia is caused by your fatness, well, you can just fix it, as though the size and literal amount of space your body takes up can just be, like you said, TK, shrunk down to fix your incongruence with your body, either based on gender and or based on being fat. It's
RB
messy,
Brooks.
and I don't like
RB
it.
Brooks.
Deep breaths. Which we've blamed now media, we've blamed cishets, we've blamed the person in the grocery store aisle. There's a lot of blame to go around, honestly. Like that's just where we're at. And so I think this pivots oh so nicely into our next question, which is another big one. So it is, what has our current moment, and our current moment being some of the context I offered at the beginning of our session, right? Global health pandemic, anti-trans legislative attacks, mass protests. What has our current moment further revealed about the treatment of fat, trans, and non-binary people? And what does it show about the work moving forward?
Well, I guess going with the theme of me starting, when I saw this question, I immediately went to a conversation I was having with a peer the other day, and I was just saying that what it has shown me in the going into third year is that people don't care about us, and what I mean by that is that we can't talk about this conversation. We can't talk about transness, fatness, Black. We can't talk about any of that without talking about intersectionality and the oppression that's
Oh my
present.
God, we're so
And I
close.
think it's so imperative
We're
for
so
me to
close
mention
to
that
capitalism.
because I feel like the pandemic or COVID or however you want to talk about it, because it's still here, right? It impacts us all at it's so many different levels, right? So you have it impacting Black individuals from the standpoint of no one's doing anything to help with racism or the injustice. And then you have fat people who are clearly saying that, COVID and the precautions are going to impact me because if I get sick, then I won't have the care. And then you have, trans people saying, well, if I do get sick and I'm fat and I try to go get care, I'm not going to get the proper care. So there are all of these
Because of
levels that I
capitalism.
constantly keep
Say
thinking
it.
about
Say
as we're talking
capitalism.
about kind of everything that has happened in the last 3 years. And the only thing I can kind of sit with, and maybe I'm 100% right, maybe I'm 100% wrong, but from my purview as a Black, queer, non-binary / trans person, it really feels like so many people don't care. And what I mean by that is I see a lot of selfishness, right? That's happening. And when I say that, it's the notion of, well, I don't want to wear a mask because
it looks like Nick might be in for the win. Nick might be replacing Bot as the chief investigative officer for the cult. Let me see. I'm seeing Bing links, Nick. I'm not seeing Instagram, though. Hang on. I'm not seeing Instagram. Let me see. Oh, wait. He might have found it. Hang on. My Instagram's not. Nope, that's not it. Nope. Let me see. Nope, no Well, Nick, you're sending interesting stuff. It just doesn't answer the question that I asked. So, nope, we're still on the lookout. We're still on the lookout for someone to say capitalism, and we are still on the lookout for an Instagram profile for RB Brooks.
Me uncomfortable, or I don't want to wear a mask because it's hot. I don't know if we could cuss, but I would say for me, bitch, I'm always hot. So now, because if I get sick and I go to the doctor, I'm gonna have to fight 3 or 4 doctors to get them to actually take me seriously as a trans person to get the care that I need. Let's talk about it. So I think that there's this thing of, we can't have this conversation, or we can't posit this. This is I guess where I'll leave it. We can't talk about this without having a real conversation about what privilege looks like in the scheme of things for people who, and I say privilege, not just from a white supremacy concept. I say privilege from the idea of people who can get quality access to care, to people who do have a really good job and have good health insurance, people who know that taking time off is there for them because they have PTO. I tell people all the time,
this guy has said every single word except for capitalism. We are this fucking close. We're almost there.
Sick. I'm freelance. If I get sick, I literally can't work because I don't have PTO that's going to come in and pay my bills. So I think about, even hearing friends share stories about flying. And I know I'm probably talking a lot about COVID, but I'm just thinking, if we're talking about everything related to COVID and the ways people have responded, but we're talking about the injustice, we're talking about all the things that we've seen in the last 3 years, it just feels like, I guess the only way I can really say it, it really feels American, very self-centered in the ways of people only thinking about what's convenient for them and not taking a moment to think about the different caveats and the injustices that marginalized people have to negotiate and navigate when or if COVID does, or any sickness for that. So.
Oh, God. Even when they said very American, yes, exactly, Alex. American means fucking capitalist.
I was just gonna
Exactly.
say, Dr. John Paul, you said it. There's just so I don't know what else I can add other than what you just beautifully shared. Um, and I mean, I think the only thing that came to mind for me is I don't want to bring it back to capitalism. We were talking about capitalism
Yes!
before it started, but that
Yes!
really, I mean,
Yes!
when we think about it, I think about I was thinking in
Who guessed number 3? Shane S'more in for the win. Identify yourself. Who guessed that Shane was going to bring us home to capitalism? Yes! Well done, an underdog. I wouldn't have picked Shane. I would have actually picked RB if I'm honest about it. I thought we were going to get a good capitalism question. XYZ said 3. I think I saw another person said 3. 3 for the win. Yup. Well done. Well done. I didn't think it was going to be 3 either, Reagan. I didn't think so. Oh, it was almost one of those moments where I was sitting here going, I was like, is it possible we're going to get through this entire conversation and they're never going to say the term capitalism? Because like, man, John Paul took me on a journey. John Paul took me up close to capitalism like 8 times, and I was like, say it. He was like, intersectionality, white supremacy, American, like justice. I was like, say capitalism. He talked about having a job. I was like, you see capitalism, mother effer. Yeah. I need a cigarette. I need a cigarette after that. It was so satisfying. And look at all the smug faces when Shane S'more mentioned, and I can't say his full name without saying Shane S'more because that's just a funny name for a fat person especially. But like, man, I was edged. I was like, give me the set. Do it. And I was like, man. Steve O'Devil pick number 1. They were edging us hard today, not saying the word that we wanted them to say. God, these dirty, queer, trans, fat people. Did anyone else have a capitalism or every single time? They know what I want. What can I say? All right, let's relive that glorious moment again. And watch all of their faces the minute that Shane S'more says capitalism.
just so I don't know what else I can add other than what you just beautifully shared. And I mean, I think the only thing that came to mind for me is I don't want to bring it back to capitalism. We were talking about capitalism before it started, but that really, I mean, when we think about it, I think about, I was thinking in the shower before I got ready for this, and I was like, if we could focus on accessibility, if we could prioritize people and humans and needs and listening and compassion and individual approaches to what people need and the care that they need, or what any of those pieces. I don't want to go down too on a rabbit hole.
I think someone just found her Instagram profile. To my secret messenger, we found her Twitter. Holy shit. I'm not going to say the person. I don't want to out the person who sent me this, but you know who you are. So we now have her Twitter. Hang on. Let me get the Twitter up. And I'm betting you on Instagram she's going to be the same thing, the same handle. I bet she is. Hang on, let me just check. Yes, we found it. Yes. We have her Instagram. Let's go on a journey. Down the Instagram of a queer, trans, fat activist. Let's do it. Damn it. I still say RB was thinking. They were all thinking capitalism. They all were. Okay. So shout out to the person who secretly sent me. Now, do you guys remember how I told you? That non-binary people are starting to use this term, NB? It's pronounced like the letter N, the letter B, but it's spelled like that. Well, check this out. Check this out. Check out our Instagram. Hang on. Look at this. RB the NB on their Twitter. Non-binary people are ethereal. Oh my word. See, people think that I'm fat, but I'm just like, yo. And I don't judge, man. I really don't. I don't care. I don't care how much people weigh. I'm just saying that, like, I fit into, like, normal size clothes. Like, that's, like, trans, educated, and pretty. Okay, well. Everyone has their, oh, God. Oh, this is so beautiful. Oh, my God. This is a treasure trove. The Deck Collective. I'm gonna spend some time. Wait, what's this? What is MBLG? The Midwestern. Oh my God. The Midwest Bisexual, Lesbian, Gay, Transgender, Asexual College Conference. No, I have the Instagram bot. I do. Same handle, at trans with a Z rights. Let's just see. I want a picture with the husband. I want to see the husband. Is this the husband? No, this just looks like a friend. Just a friend. Oh my. Wow. I better not find any porn on here. I'm going to be very upset if I find porn. Is this the husband? Convinced someone to go to the ballet and he liked it. Swipe to the end to see his before ballet face. Definitely another tranny. I want to see a picture of them standing next to each other, though. I feel so cruel. I feel like such a dick doing this, but not really. Not really. Oh, looks like her husband has not had top. I'm sorry. Their husband has not had top surgery either. Why can't I find a picture of them standing next to each other? That's all I want. The fuck? Oh, I see. It's someone standing beside. Okay. All right. Well, we found a picture. Oh, well, I guess kinda. Definitely taller. All right. This is very satisfying. I'm gonna spend some time going through this later. I'll tell you that. Just for fun. Just for fun. All right, let's go back to our presentation where they've just said capitalism. Finally, they edged us for so long and they finally gave us our capitalism orgasm. And this would be a great time to mount the like button if you haven't mounted the like button already. Come on, we got our capitalism orgasm. Everyone, make sure you mount the like button for me, please. Or do something else dirty to the like button, whatever you want to do.
Instead of prioritizing money and prioritizing, you know, we all live in the space where we need to prioritize money to survive, but
because of
I'm
capitalism,
talking about big corporations and the other pieces. When we prioritize that, people's health and safety and well-being are just thrown to the wind, particularly fat and trans people, and many more intersections of those identities as well. And I think what I take away from every decision that has been made in the last 2 to 3 years, but really you could bring it back all the way to 2014 and before that in so many ways, around how people talk about what we're navigating as a society, is let's prioritize the money, let's prioritize the quantity, let's prioritize impact versus comfort, rest, need, and well-being. and what people need to be able to achieve those things. Because I don't know, I many of my times, I think, as a fat and trans person, I feel too complicated for people to care about. And I think people have made me feel too complicated, too complex to care about the things that I need to feel well and cared for and safe. And yeah, that's where I'll leave it. So.
This is so good. I have so much to think about. So I'm like reflecting in real time. Just like I'm like, oh,
Do it,
y'all are
Caesar.
amazing humans.
Do it, Caesar.
I think
Come
the
on.
only thing that I will add is I think like I agree with everything that I said, and I think about too all of the fat trans disabled folks that have been telling us this for years, like that's been saying this for years, right? So I think about again, I'm very big, I love TikTok.
Hang on, bot found the gold mine. Hang on, bot, you are bot is still our chief investigative officer because bot found the gold mine Instagram photo. There it is. She's not like, they're not, I keep misgendering. They're not much taller than their tranny husband. Just a little bit taller. There it is. Is everyone satisfied? Well done, bot. Thank you.
So much to a point where I feel like it's a little unhealthy, but there's a creator, her name is Amani Crutches and Spice, who I love. Iconic. Talks about communication within disability, within her identities as a Black woman, all that stuff. So I think about that a lot, as well as I think about one of my friends, whose name is T Banks, based out of Madison, Wisconsin, who is a fat Black trans man and disabled artist, right? Who talks a lot about in his work how his fatness, his health has impacted his identity, and how at the end of the day.
So, okay, to be serious for a second, all the talk about health. Do you guys remember yesterday when we were watching the social reproduction theory presentation, and that woman was like collective care, collective care, collective care, and I made everyone define what collective care means. Well, collective care is related directly to the socialist push for like universal health care, right? Every time you hear Bernie like bitching and complaining about universal health care, that all comes from these people because they believe that the government should be providing care for everyone because it is capitalism that prevents people from getting the care they need because of those evil profit motives of capitalism. And so if we just had universal health care, we would eliminate all of the care problems in this country and everyone would be happier. And I just want to draw that back to, because these people keep talking about care, 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 care over and over and over again. Every time you hear the term care or pushes for like government funded healthcare, that comes from these people.
The people that are going to be thrown under the bus are Black, are going to be fat trans folks, especially Black and brown and indigenous trans folks and trans women and femmes, right? And it shows at the end of the day that if it is for the betterment of a privileged identity, they will do whatever they want to like y'all have shared, to build a level of convenience, right? I even think about to even how this like pandemic has like shaped me and shaped a lot of like my friends in my community, and how that also comes in line with how I view like rest and what that looks like too. I feel like as fat folks, like fat folks, if they rest, they're just seen as lazy, and I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of it. And my fiance and I, we're very hilariously the exact same size, which I don't want to say that they are plus size or fat. That is their choice to decide what that is for them, but we're the same size all the way down to our shoes, right? Which again, I lucked out there. But even when we met like in the pandemic and we're trying to navigate that, like we talked a lot about like how we view like our bodies and what that looks like for us, and how we know that those conversations are not being had by a lot of other people, and how even if we do bring it up, folks just assume that, oh, we're just taking up space, oh, it's this, it's not that big of a deal, yada yada yada, when it is, and folks just don't want to listen. And we're at the point, especially from we share that we work in a variety of different industries, that at the end of the day we're disposable. Like we're fully disposable.
Do you guys remember yesterday when the social reproduction theory woman was talking about how people are disposable under capitalism, whereas under Marxism, time would be disposable because they'd eliminate the profit motive. And so because we don't have to produce as much stuff, we'd have like all of this extra time to be able to like paint and fish and be autists and all this stuff. And so capitalism is where people are disposable, and Z00s just said that they're considered to be disposable.
Whether it is us in a role, whether it's career or social standing, that if folks are done with us, then they're gonna move on to what else. And I feel like for trans and non-binary folks, it really puts in perspective of who truly is in your corner and who's truly gonna fight and advocate for you, and who is using you or using the relationship that you have as a performance to gain something. Again, I'm not saying it's everyone. The folks did have some enlightenings during, like, in this time of our pandemic lives. But generally, that is, I feel like, a big thing. So yeah.
I think for me, the piece, so like that was pandemic heavy, and like we could have a whole part 2 that really talks about kind of the implications of the pandemic for fat trans people. And in fact, I'll put a note, put a pin in that as a potential futurity conversation, because like to kind of bundle everything y'all have mentioned, right? Like the public consciousness around the limitations of our healthcare systems became very, very obvious to pretty much the general public, in ways that, like TK mentioned, folks, especially in disability justice work, but then also,
I mean, this presentation is like spanning the gamut of all the different woke topics, because you could make an argument that and these people already have, is that fat people queer the gender binary and so is a part of queer Marxism. But you also have, and we haven't really done a lot with disability studies, honestly, because I don't find disability studies to be as cringe as all the other areas, but we probably should dig into disability studies at some point. And so you have the disability aspect of it, which for disability studies, their major push is going to be universal health care, so that everyone has the care they need, regardless of their resources, and everything is equitable and all that stuff. Then you've got the intersectionality stuff. They've already brought up racism, because Black trans fat people have it worse than non-Black trans fat people or whatever. So, I mean, this is like an intersectionality smorgasbord is what this is. It was a great freeze frame, isn't it? Perfect. Perfectly done. You're welcome.
Folks of color, queer and trans folks, like we've known, like we've known for a while, to then have folks be, well, this is egregious, this is so messy, like this, our hospitals and our clinics are falling out from underneath themselves. And it's like, yes, they are. Welcome to our frustration. But I also think about the legislative attacks in the form of just bills after bills after bills, statewide bills that really want to put limitations, especially on trans children. And we had a whole conversation last year for our teach-in called The Next Generation, where we really honed in on this. So we're
going to watch that too, don't worry.
That we did necessarily, but I really think about some of the narratives we've shared, especially with that first question about coming into an understanding of being trans fat people, right? And how it was very much influenced by folks' perceptions of us even as children, and how some of these bills that want to go the length of indicating that either teachers or folks that work at schools or adults in these children's lives are supposed to make determinations about disclosing information about their potential transness, or if they're questioning their gender, right? And how much fatness and size will inherently play into either conceptions or perhaps misconceptions of a child's child's gendered experience. Just thinking about how, other related tropes of, aging kids of color to be far older than they actually are, thinking about experiences of bullying and mistreatment of fat children and how that's going to interplay with transness for youth. And there's really no end cap to that thought, but I think that's a piece too, where I just think about little me in K through 12 with just, I've been, I'm AFAB assigned fat at birth. I've been big forever. So just I've always kind of had extra shit come my way.
That is an inherent characteristic.
Anyway, I'll unpack that later. But I think that's a piece too, just thinking about what are our trans children and trans youth and queer kids coming into in this moment too, where there's going to be even additional monitoring and policing of their bodies in K through 12 when they may already be navigating fatness, which is just not well treated in our K through 12 systems also. So end thought on that. Any other things you want to add, just kind of on thinking about in this moment, anything we've already talked about before I ask our wrap-up question before we get into audience questions? Any other thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I gotta go to the little Marxist room, guys. So I'm gonna leave this playing, and it's your job. Anytime I leave, you guys gotta. I'm not gonna be listening. You guys gotta take notes, take good notes, and let me know what's going on in the chat. But I'll be right back. Okay, there you go.
I was gonna say to you, RB, I think to that point around what is it gonna look like stipulation-wise as we fight this, anti-trans legislation, and I think the first thing that people talk about when you think about health, or when you say, okay, can somebody make a healthy decision about their body or about what those things are going to look like? And fatness is going to come into play immediately. So when you start to have questions about, okay, maybe we have stipulations around gender affirming care, someone needs to be healthy, a healthy young adult to get there. What are those stipulations going to look like? And what is health going to be taken into account? How does fatness play into that? And so I think, to your point, fatness is completely intertwined with what that is going to be. If it's not a full out block from being able to happen, people are going to fight tooth and nail for whatever stipulation they can put to make it inaccessible. And again, it will completely be inaccessible to fat and trans people, specifically fat trans young people.
I was going to say, this kind of ties in. I know we probably shouldn't get into the audience questions, but I think a lot of what you both have brought up really ties into this notion about the narrative of, what is fat, what is healthy for fat people. And I think it's important to note that I think a lot of, if we want to dig into this question more,
right,
I want to make sure that I park and lot that for that part. But I think a lot of it is this notion of what, when you said I've been fat since I, have been, at birth, it really is this notion of where is our mind around that word? And I think that we have to really, it's kind of the same thing with, Black as a bad word, trans as a bad word. These words are ultimately all of these different things that society has assigned to them. And so I really think that this conversation, right, is unpacking the ways that we look at certain words. Words mean things, right? So
don't lie
what
to
does
me,
healthy
Steven.
mean? What does fat mean? And how do we recreate, or how do we rebrand? Gotta love capitalism. How do we rebrand the ways that we talk about healthy for fat people? Because again, it always has a very negative connotation whenever you say both words. And I think it's imperative for us to really stop and think about how are we renaming, or how are we giving voice to different words that we put into our own lexicon as we're talking about.
See, once they break the capitalism cherry, they just keep coming back to capitalism. They held out for so long, and then once someone says once one person says capitalism, then another person says capitalism, all of a sudden everyone's saying capitalism.
About our identity.
I'm actually game if we want to do some of these audience questions, because I think that last question I have planned for us is a really good wrap up question.
Closing.
So
Perfect.
So
perfect.
Since we're already in it, the audience question we got, right, I'll just read out for folks, and there's some other ones, but the one that we're already kind of playing with at the moment is quote, I would love to know if any of the panelists could speak on dealing with the narrative of it's okay to be fat as long as you're healthy, because they see a lot they see that a lot, but feel like it's toxic sometimes. Yes, indeed it is. So let's dig into that a bit more. We're already headed there with this idea of health being tethered to fatness, because I'm sure we got a couple thoughts.
I have thoughts. So this was a phrase that I internalized a lot, especially as a young college kid, because I already was fat going into college, and I was like, okay, like, oh, I can be like chubby, but like I need to work out, I need to do X, Y, and Z to maintain this level, which like in the grand scheme of things, like is not good. It was not a good way for me to view my health, because at the time I was healthy in the eyes of my doctor. At the time, I'm gonna go very medical. I was deemed as healthy. My blood pressure wasn't high, my cholesterol was fine, all that good stuff, right? You know, mental health wise, not so great, but that's a different story. But I internalized that a lot of like, oh, I'm gaining weight, so I have to be at a socially acceptable weight to be seen as healthy. And that's not true. And like for me, it was more of how I needed to change that narrative within myself of what it means to be healthy, because healthy for one person is very different from someone else. And I think that when we think about health, it is not only an individual thing with our own selves, but it's also a collective, like it's a community as well. Of like thinking about health and like what that means,
you
right?
don't
And
say.
it doesn't need to be
like
so literal,
care?
like I just shared, of like medical and body. It can mean like socially, it can mean with the relationships that you have, it can mean just how you view yourself into the world. It could be how folks perceive you. It can be a lot of different things. And I think that the mindset of it's okay to be fat as long as you're healthy. It's like, what do you mean by fat? Do you mean like, oh, like if you're 5'10", that means, oh, do you weigh 200 pounds and it's socially acceptable? Or does it truly mean like, hey, I am working within my community to create a healthier narrative around fatness, around talking about fatness, around understanding fatness, and understanding what that means within community, as well as what it means individually that can be influenced by community, to make it something, to create something new, and to go against the grain of that traditional narrative. Because at the end of the day, that's what it really is. Like what healthy means for someone in the context of individual, in the context of community, is it influences each other. And so I think that's how I'm thinking of it. And I'm also still learning of this too, of like, what does this mean, and how does healthy look within my own body, within intimate spaces, with people, within social spaces, with people within my professional life as well. And I think there's so much more I could say about it, but I'm gonna leave it there.
Something that really came up for me, TK, when you were talking, is this idea of taking morality away from healthy, and taking these pieces of what does it mean to be moral, good, seen, valid, cared for.
I mean,
you know, however people.
You guys know what this is, right? So I want everyone to play amateur psychologist for a second. So these people are like really harping on the idea of fat people are seen as bad people. Fat people are not seen as moral people. Fat people are not seen as healthy people. So if someone is like, and no one has said anything like that. I mean, maybe people can think what they want, but I want people to think about like the type, like, okay, so if someone is saying, you see me as bad, you see me as immoral, you see me as unhealthy, what narrative are they telling in their head? Are these people who are confident in themselves? Are these people who love themselves? If they're saying, you see me as bad, you see me as immoral, Yeah. They're projecting. They're projecting how they see themselves. They see themselves as bad. They see themselves as immoral. They see themselves as unhealthy. They're very insecure. And so you always got to keep this in mind. It's like people will tell you all the insecurities that they have. And by the way, it's like how you look has nothing to do with whether or not you love yourself. I hope people understand that just in general. How you look has nothing to do with whether or not you love yourself, whether or not you accept yourself, whether or not you are comfortable with who you are and what you're giving to the world. Now, these people have made it all about looks. They've started a whole fat positivity movement because they themselves do not love themselves. But I hope people know, like, you're allowed to love yourself no matter what, and nothing that anyone says should be able to disrupt that. Oh, hey, Naptown, did you watch my did you watch the stream with Grace earlier? That was something. Naptown always skulking about, man. Always skulking about. Exactly. Tell me you're insecure without telling me you're insecure. Well, I mean, they are they're telling, they're the ones saying that fat people are considered bad. They're considered immoral. Excellent appearance on the Grace Thorpe channel. Will you be reviewing the content, issuing any further response? Also, oh god, I would speak with Ben Thorpe. I would do it. If Ben Thorpe wants to have a whole conversation with me about how he's obviously and clearly a narcissist, I would do it. I might even prepare. I might even have notes for that. I would absolutely do it. I have to rewatch that. There are so many things that I wish I had said to Grace at the end when her fury was ignited. There are so many things I wish I had said, but I was like, I kind of knew it was going to happen, but I was just like, man, like all I was doing in my head was like laughing at the situation. I was like, oh, this is why you don't do this bullshit all the time. But I would talk to Ben Thorpe. Absolutely. Why not? That would be fun.
Think about morality away from what it means to be healthy. And I think when we think about healthy, the thing that comes at least to my mind is a long life, and all of these other things. But we don't, and particularly around fatness, I think we think about a long life. How do we make sure you don't have, I'm listing off the things I've been told my whole life, a stroke, a heart attack, any of these pieces around what it means to be fat and how fatness impacts your health. And then I started to think about,
indeed they
well,
are.
what is all the life that I'm seeing taken away from me already? Like, what does it mean to have health in a community when, we see people's lives taken away instantly from a variety of different pieces, from police violence, from mass gun violence, from, carcinogens that are dropped into communities without knowledge? Like, what does it mean to have health? And when you think about it in an individual level, we're not thinking about health at a larger community. What does it mean to have a healthy, thriving community? But we pinpoint it into like, how are you a good person and how are you going to have a long, healthy life without thinking about how health can be impacted by so many other things that people clearly don't care to make lots of different choices about in regards to climate change or other pieces.
Climate change! Holy shit, we should have done bingo.
I think for me, when I think about it, I
need to
really
make a new
have to
bingo
pull
card.
away. One of my friends that I've followed for a long time, Fat Girl Flow, Carissa, talked about how many people when she posts a picture of her body are like, you're going to die, you're not going to be well, like you're so unhealthy, you like these really terrible things. And she said, you have no idea how unhealthy I was when I had an eating disorder or when I had these other pieces and what unhealthy looks like in those spaces. And so, TK, like you said, I think it's so individual about what does it mean
my
to be
channel,
healthy for
Nick.
you,
I can have
and to make
bingo
sure
if I
you
want.
are well, and what well means for you in your body, the way you exist, the way you navigate life. But I think we get really in a very toxic space when we start to think about size and fatness as an indicator of health in any way, shape, or form. But I also don't want to take that away from individuals who, there can be.
Hang on, we already covered this earlier, but I'll repeat again, Sunspot. You may not have been here. How do they respond to their trans fat activist peers and allies who have actually died in recent months? Here's what they say. It is capitalism that killed them because capitalism is the thing that prevents us from having universal health care in this country. And so if we had just had universal health care, then they would have had the care that they needed and they wouldn't have died. They blame all deaths, all sickness, all of this stuff on the lack of care. This is why they push community care, community care, community care, or communal care, or communizing care. Anything related to care is about capitalism does not allow you to have the care you need because we live in an inherently inequitable society. And if we just got rid of capitalism and instituted Marxism, then we would have universal health care, and you would be able to go to a doctor, you would be able to go to a mental health professional, you would be able to get whatever drugs you are prescribed on a moment's notice. And so that's what the answer is going to be. No, this is not what was said. You need to listen. It's capitalism's fault. The 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. Everything these people do, whether they are fat or thin or queer or straight or white or black, etc., every single thing that these people do is always and forever about attacking capitalism.
People who are prescribed certain things for certain reasons, but I think that's a whole other conversation.
Capitalism is killing them because capitalism puts profits over people. We saw this in the social reproductive the social reproduction theory training yesterday. Because capitalism puts profit over people. Under capitalism, people are disposable, and therefore capitalism is killing them because it is preventing them from having access to the care that they need to survive. And remember, guys, capitalism is always defined as private property ownership. So private medical doctors, private insurance companies, all of that is creating a fundamentally inequitable society because people have private practices, private businesses. Doctors are not employed by the government. The health insurance companies are not running through the government, at least. And so because all of that is privatized, that prevents them from getting access to the life-saving communal care of which they are entitled to. And that's why capitalism is killing them. For profit for the medical industry. Yep. No, healthy's not. You guys, we need to listen. Come on. Privatize medical care because Marxists want to get rid of all private businesses, so they don't want doctors to have private practices. They want everyone to work for the government, right? And so if we got rid of all private medical businesses and all private medical insurance, everything would run through the government, which means everyone would have access to the same resources. I've already answered this. Deprivatize everything. Their answer to the problem is to abolish capitalism, which means to abolish all private property, which means the government provides you with everything. And if the government provides you with everything, no private businesses, no private pharmacies, no private health insurance companies, everyone has access to the same resources. That means they would get the care that they need. Guys, if you have questions about something, you always just need to work your way back. Start with, they want to abolish capitalism. That is always their goal. Capitalism is defined as private property ownership. So what private property needs to be abolished to move from capitalism to Marxism? Would I be presumptuous to believe that a person who puts pronouns in emails has Marxist leanings? Yes, because there are a lot of companies who are mandating that, and it's not necessarily someone's choice, like they have to do it. So I would not make any assumptions about any pronoun. Now, if the pronouns are zers or fairs or some sort of like weird neo pronoun thing, you can probably make some assumptions. But like there are a lot of companies now that are mandating that people put pronouns in like their signatures or their bios or things like that. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. It just means that the company mandated it. So don't make assumptions. Don't do what conservatives do to me all the time and judge people by their haircuts, right?
conversation about the medical complex and then other things that people learn in medical health care and other things. But, just want to make room for everybody's got to define what's best for them and what is healthy to them, but also know that it has implications as well, depending on what that can look like.
I just wanted to say, you really want to make a doctor upset? Be above their little weight scale thing and have vitals that all look normal. Woo! They come in that office so red because they don't know what to do. They can't, it doesn't compute. Well, how are you 345 pounds, but all your vitals are okay? Because I'm well. Thank you so much, doctor. That to me is what healthy is. If I am living and breathing and I'm able to make sure that my vitals and everything are okay, that's healthy. That's it.
But does it stop you from looking at your doctor visit chart and looking at that big red exclamation point next to the word morbidly obese? They get
Right.
you right back with that one. And I think too, like Shane, to your point, right? The morality of it becomes a matter. When people say that shit, right? It's about two things. It's about your relationship with food. They're making commentary on your relationship with food and your relationship with activity, neither of which are publicly available to the people making the comments, right? I'm a vegetarian and I'm fat. People can't compute, right? I'm just like, I've been a vegetarian for 17 years, but I also like potatoes, right? Sorry about it. So just the relationship with these kind of material things, as though you're supposed to be shamed into not having the relationship with food that you have, or being motivated to do.
I saw an amazing recipe for potatoes this morning on Instagram. I've been getting a lot of recipe videos in my Instagram, and now all I want to do is like make garlic confit and use it in everything. Like, I had no idea making garlic confit was so easy. I'm gonna be like making a whole big batch of garlic confit, and then you take the garlic confit and you make like a cream sauce with it, with like cheese, and then you put some macaroni in it, and you put more garlic confit. Or you could put the cream sauce over potatoes, make potatoes au gratin with the garlic. I'm watching way too many recipe videos on Instagram. It's starting to become a problem. I might actually start cooking again. I used to cook. I don't cook anymore. Anyway, let's keep going. Sorry.
Do more activity as though you're not necessarily engaging in physical activity that would be socially acceptable based on whatever ridiculous standard that we're on, right? And it turns into this moral failing if you're not aligned in the way that other folks think that you should be. And it reminds me, in kind of like a tangential way, of the same kind of stigmatizing cringiness that comes with like the PrEP conversation, or like the gay sex conversation around like, well, you're participating in risky behavior, so if something happens to you, it's on you. And it's like, no, like there's choices that I can make that are informed, right? I can be informed about putting the potatoes in my body. I can be informed about what type of sexual activity I engage in and make choices, understand that there may be consequences, right? But ultimately not to say that it is that the consequence is that I'm fat, or that the consequence is that I, contract something, or that, I'm at a place where that's a higher risk, right? All of this is high risk because we live in tumultuous times where, to Shane's point, there's environmental factors that are.
Capitalism makes everything high risk. Capitalism, look at that freeze frame. Capitalism has created climate change, and climate change is going to kill us all. Capitalism prevents us from having healthcare. Capitalism is killing all of us through the 40+ hour work week, where we literally can't survive unless we go to these soul sucking jobs. Capitalism is killing us.
Poisoning us. I don't care about going through the Taco Bell drive-through when the water is getting polluted. You know what I mean? Just like, help me understand. So anyway, help me understand.
I was just gonna say, to your point, RB, it makes me think of the book that Kate Bornstein wrote that was like, I think it was 99 Ways to Stay Alive, or 100 Ways to Stay Alive, and talking about what does it mean to stay alive and what does it mean to be okay. The other thing that I thought of, the thought is leaving me, but I can't stand when that happens. But I was thinking really about this piece of, I think it's gone, but I was thinking it might come back if we keep talking. Okay. I'll leave for other space to share. It might come back.
There is another audience question that came through as we started talking about this one that I think is a good one to hop into. And then I know, John, there's one specifically for you. So maybe we'll do this broad one and then get you back on that one from early. So the audience question we have right now is, do you have thoughts about what you're not seeing, but you'd like to see from LGBTQ or specifically trans orgs/movements to be liberatory and relevant for fat trans folks?
Liberatory means liberate from capitalism.
Well, I was going to say, I think for me, as I'm processing this, I would love. So, one thing that I made as I've been thinking about my own journey, one of the connections I made in therapy was the relationship I have with food is connected to it's connected to the way I grew up in terms of being poor, right? So a lot of the relationship that I have with food, I celebrate with food, because growing up, that was the way my parents celebrated. When we had food, it meant that we were in a good place, right? And so there are a lot of things that I don't think we talk enough about, specifically with trans folks, right? In this notion of, do we have enough, or how are we making access, or how do we make things accessible for folks, and the relationship folks are having with their own bodies and how they come up with, and even too, I think culturally, I wish that there.
But I feel like the Shane S'mores Instagram is the perfect example of this is the perfect example of someone. Hang on, we're gonna look at Shane's Instagram really quick. You remember how I was telling you guys that all fat activists are amateur porn stars? I want to show you what I mean. They're all amateur porn stars. And I feel like this person, if we dug into their link tree, let's just look at their link tree real quick. Just let's just take a look. Is there going to be a Pornhub link? Let's see. Okay, no Pornhub link yet, but I have been very successful in finding Pornhub links on these people's Instagram. So let's just see. Oh. Very sexy. Very sexy. Let's see. It's just screaming amateur porn star. I just really feel like, what? See? Amateur porn star-esque. I saw the Speedo pic spot. Oh god! Oh god! What? Okay. Hang on. Bro. Why? I don't understand. I don't understand at all. I don't understand. Amateur porn stars. Once you go down the fat studies rabbit hole, you see things you can't unsee. All right, that's enough for right now. That's all. Do you guys enjoy that? This is the fat studies rabbit hole that I've been looking for. Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. We have about 20 minutes left of this presentation. Let's make it through.
There were more cultural conversations about what body size looks like, or what body size means for marginalized people, specifically trans Black people, right? I think for me, that's something that I see a lot. I think we talk a lot about the injustices or the issues that we're having, but we're not talking about them from the lens of cultural, or we're not being very specific about what those experiences are outside of the purview, if that makes sense.
My thought came back, so I'm going to share it before it's gone. knew it would happen. So, one of the things that I thought about when we think about health and doctors, you both, Dr. John Paul and RB, were talking about like, what is it like to go into the doctor's office and people share things. And I think we can bring it back to a capitalist lens of how can we treat as many people as possible in a minimal amount of time, and what is an easy blame that I can place on an individual for ownership versus having to take through and dig through what might be an actual cause for high blood pressure or for anything else. And I think about, my wife is a Black woman, a Black queer woman, and about how often it took her 3 years to get to a doctor who would listen to her and actually take into account what it means to explore somebody's health conditions and to find a root, or whether it be something genetic or something interactive or something going on. And I think about that as her as a fat Black queer woman as well, and how much of that is even more dismissed as a fat person, and how being fat gives an easy excuse rather than saying, let's do this test, or let's run this thing, or let's get you in touch with a referral that can do these pieces. And again, this is all when you have health insurance. So a variety of other things that go into kind of where I feel it ties back to capitalism on how much we can minimize and shrink, and where fat phobia can thrive to allow other things to succeed. And so
capitalism is the cause of all fat phobia. Obviously.
Wanted to take that note, but then I think about this question in particular is, I want to see people, this is one thing that comes to mind in particular, but I want surgeons to get rid of a BMI requirement in regards to gender affirming care. I want surgeons to get rid of it in regards to, hormone replacement therapy in general.
Why would we take weight into consideration when we're going to cut off body parts? That just seems like a totally, totally safe idea and not at all fraught with error.
Surgeries, it is just, there is no reason other than the fact that surgeons don't feel comfortable because our medical health complex does not teach people how to take care of fat bodies. Surgeons are not taught how to take care of fat bodies, and the nuances and the intricacies that aren't really that complex. Seriously. Just takes time. Like, you have to learn any individual thing or any different thing to cater for and care for.
Thank you,
so I would like to see that be something that is advocated for, because I think as we continue to advocate for gender affirming care and protecting gender affirming care, like we talked about earlier, whether it be for youth or for adults in some circumstances, the minute they can stipulate it, they're going to find a way to make fatness a barrier from getting the care that people deserve. So I think that is critical. And I think we're starting to see it, but I think I would like to see fat people celebrated in our movements. I want to see them in the music, in the ads, in the art, in the fashion, in the conversations. I want to see the bravery and the resilience and all of the things that we are applauded for in regards to existing be rewarded. I want to see fat people get paid. I want to see fat people celebrated. And so I know those are large. It's not a tangible thing that I can give, but I think, give people, particularly fat, trans, Black, and BIPOC and Indigenous people, the opportunity, disabled, fat, trans folks, the opportunity to be celebrated, be loved, cared for, valued, and respected. And that can trickle into a variety of different individual things. But if you operate with that at your core, you make decisions differently. So I'll pass it over to you, TK.
I love this. This is so good. I'm gonna post this question with a question. For folks in the audience, think about like, queer and trans organizations, whether you work at one, whether you've heard of them. Just think about any programming initiatives, intentionality of diverse staff that centers fat trans folks. Like, just think about it. Like, if you are not the person that is intentionally doing it because you are a fat trans person, it does not exist. It's coming out. It is, like both Shane and Dr. John Paul has shared, but within these orgs, like they're not talking about fatness. And if they are, it is probably internal conversations, right? It's not shared with the masses, right? Even my own, right? Like, I don't know of programming that's happened in the past or initiatives within my office in the past that centers around transness and fatness, right?
I bet there's some
And I
now
think
at the
that's really
University of
important to
California
name
at Davis.
because, like, we have shared, like,
But can you find me the link to the diversity office where this person works at the University of California at Davis, where Zares works? Thank you, if you don't mind.
quote-unquote phenomenon of fatness and talking about it is still new to a lot of people, and not using it, talking about fatness in a non-derogatory way, right? That isn't just self-deprecating to someone's body. And so I think that's important to name, that a lot of this quote unquote nuance of fat trans folks like existing, even though we've been existing for the masses, is still a newer conversation, right? And so I agree. I think I think the BMI shouldn't exist in general, period. As well as how in general, like, a lot of us just default to a lot of things, right? So even in the sense of, like, if we break it down to as simple as like a program, like I was a programmer for like 6 years working in higher ed, it's too much. I feel like it's too much, but it's fine. But even then, like, when we think about like speakers and folks that we want to bring to campus,
Thanks, Bot. Appreciate it.
a lot of them are thin and don't talk about fatness. Like,
California at Davis, I'm pretty sure. So that's the one I'm looking for. Sent me something from Michigan. Oh, maybe, never mind. Maybe, well, I still want to find the diversity office for University of California at Davis. Yes, I see this now. You sent me the new update. So the University of Michigan, we have a member of our community that works at the University of Michigan, don't we? That might be a good source of information. But I still want to see and again, if you don't mind, if you're doing something else, that's fine. But like I still want to see the diversity office page for the University of California at Davis. Just because I suspect it's going to be uber woke because Z00 was the director there.
that I'm seeing a conversation about fatness that is accessible for free to do. Like, I've seen it at different universities or different organizations that will have these events, but they're not open to the public. They're not free. And so, like, honestly, this is the first time that I'm seeing it, that like it's readily available. It is easy to get to. Like, I think even my mother is watching this right now, and I think that's great, right? Because it's accessible and it's easy to do. And again, I'm not saying that, like, I know I've missed stuff. I know that there's probably been stuff in the past that I'm not trying to excuse,
in for the win. Thank you, Trendlin.
Not trying to look over that there are things that have happened in the past that I don't know about,
Appreciate
right?
it.
But that's kind of what I think about, is that like this
oh God,
is still
the LinkedIn. Thank you.
For the masses, a newer conversation and a newer narrative and dialogue that we're talking about. Like, we're not talking about the body positivity movement. Again, that's a whole other panel. That's a whole other thing.
Is it?
But really having a conversation about talking about fatness itself is new work, right? And so for me, what I want to see, and this is also me saying this to myself, is also having fat trans people in leadership, and having and them being centralized within the work, right? And not us just like doing a default. I think defaulting can be very harmful in a lot of different ways. But that's what I think about a lot, and it makes me reflect on, as a new director, a new young director of an LGBT center, in a state like California, where it is more towards the quote unquote health conscious, how I running as a leader, a black fat trans leader, can center fatness within my work and within the work of others.
Centering fatness.
So we are nearing our time. I just want to name that because unfortunately time is not just a social construct. It is real and it dictates our coexistence in space.
That's a white supremacist
So I
thing
did
as
want to
well.
at least pose that.
So pop quiz, why do these people believe that time is an element of white supremacy and is a social construct that's been created by white supremacy? I actually have an article about this on the Substack. I want to know who's been paying attention. Why do these people believe that time is a social construct that has been created by white supremacy? Anyone know? Because, tell me more, Jason, because of the time clock. Yeah, that's not wrong. I want more, though. Time relates to capitalism. Why? Because you need time to uphold capitalism? Get up and work for us? You guys are so good. Work hours 9 to 5. Punch it, Chewy. Exactly. You guys are so good. Time upholds capitalism. There's always an element of like you feel you need to be productive at all times because they think that people are disposable under capitalism, but under Marxism, time is going to be disposable. Capitalism puts profit motives over life. Exactly. The owners watch your time. The bourgeois watch your time. They think that capitalism invented time. Well done, guys.
Last question that I have drafted for y'all, and then Dr. John Paul, if you wanted to address the direct question to you in your final thought wrap up, absolutely feel free to do that too. I think we touched on some of the like medical ickiness and how to make those less fat shaming, but I'm sure there's more to be said. So the final question that I had posed for our panelists that was inspired by this oh so incredible book called Belly of the Beast,
Belly
The
of
Politics
the Beast
of Anti-Fatness as Anti-Blackness by Deshaun L. Harrison, which is an absolute must-read. Grab that. In the book, Deshaun dedicates an entire chapter, the initial chapter, to the idea that while, yes, it is critical to do the vital work of radical self-love, we need to move beyond self-love to break down existing structures that make us interrogate our own bodies in the first place. So my final question to y'all is kind of a wrap up for us, is what does it look like to move beyond self-love and into a liberated future?
Liberated means liberated from capitalism. Hang on.
Well,
Hang on. Sunspot, I think you may have not been around lately, but they are allowed to use capitalism to promote the revolution. So we've got to stop saying this, guys. I expect anyone who has been watching my channel for any period of time at all, you need to get this out of your system. This is not an own. This does not point out their hypocrisy. Their books quite literally say that they are allowed to engage in capitalism if it is in service of the revolution, as long as they don't become part of the bourgeois. So they're allowed to do it. Please. It's just like it's amateur, guys. We're better than this. We really are.
Tradition. I think for me, what I'll start with is thinking about kind of what does liberation mean for me. I think liberation for me is really seeing folks or watching folks embody the process of unlearning all the things that they have learned around me, my identity, my body, the way I feel about my body, the way I talk about my body. Like, I'll say this very lovingly. My podcast host, I know one time I had said something about like guilty pleasures, and they stopped me and said, girl, ain't nothing guilty about that. You better enjoy that. And I was like, wow, I didn't even realize like they were catching me say things that could lead to. So I think like that's the kind of stuff that I think I want to embody.
Incorrect.
I want to see people doing the work and not relying kind of, I think, both Shane, you and, Tristan have both kind of said, right? It always takes a Black trans or a fat trans person to kind of name the injustice. Like, I don't want to have to wait to see someone wanting to make a change or wanting to do the work because they've been called out to do it, right? Like, you need to be doing your own learning the same way that I'm needing to learn all these different things that are going on around me, right? Around my privilege and undoing the, the injustices or the pieces around that. That's the stuff I'm looking for. And to kind of address this so I can make space for other folks, this notion of hearing, how can the medical community make these consultations more fat friendly and less shaming? I think that there has to be some type of, and again, I say this in this mind of, liberation and thinking of what a beautiful or a more inclusive world can look like for us. We have to get medical practitioners who are really, really rooted or very much kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They have to be invested in making sure that the people that they are serving truly are seen and heard and valued. And I think that, I find that a lot of medical practitioners will say and do things and go, well, that's not my intention. Well, my mom would always say the pathway to hell is paved with good intentions, right? It's the impact that I think that that's so important. And I really wish that there were more medical professionals who were truly vested in this notion of, I don't want you leaving my office feeling hurt. I don't want you leaving my office feeling bad about who you are. I want to help you feel good as much as I want you to also be good, if that makes sense. And so all that to be said, I think that there's a lot of, you spend all this time reading those medical books, girl, but pick up, that book by Deshaun. Pick up, go on Tumblr, girl. People back on Tumblr now that they leaving Twitter. Read something.
Really?
Right? Go to Twitter, follow, go to Instagram. The facts are talking. And I think that's the thing that we really need is it's more of this notion of self-efficacy. You shouldn't have to wait till someone tells you to do better, right? I need people doing better because it can't always be us three, us four, talking about the injustices and the things that other people are doing that continue to perpetuate the harm that we all have to navigate. So do the work. That's literally what my whole thing is. Just please do something.
Oh my God, I love this. I would also say too is that that like the unlearning, yes, is a big part of it, not just individually, but like communally. Like if you're unlearning, but your community is not, what does that say about your community, right? And so I think about like the notion of how a lot of us have or had working roles that center queer and trans people, and how a lot of us, like, at least from the experience that I've had of like, what does liberation look like is that one day my position doesn't need to exist, right? And I think about how
none
a
of our
liberated
positions
future
would
looks
exist.
like is that fat people just exist, and there's no hot topic, there's no controversy, none of that. But there might be controversies based on their behavior. Behavior is one thing, but them existing shouldn't be like a hot button issue. And how this is not just like within the medical field, it's in every single aspect of our lives, and how it is everyone's responsibility to advocate for fat trans people. And it's not just a point of like, oh, I don't know where to start. Like, again, like Dr. John Paul was saying, we're talking, like the fat folks are talking. We've been having these conversations for not just the last 10 years, but for decades, right? And it's on all of us, especially folks that are not fat trans people, to do that work and to have difficult conversations, because this is not comfortable. Like, it's not meant to be comfortable, and it's gonna show some true colors of who's in community. And also, to truly center fat trans people is to give them the opportunities that they rightfully deserve, right? So yeah.
It's a big question, RB, and Dr. John Paul, TK, y'all have been so healing for me today. This has truly been, just a transformative conversation filled with such love for me. Because I work from home now, I feel isolated in a lot of ways, in some ways, and I think it's just I don't know, to be in space with such incredible people is just such a gift and an honor. And so the first thing that comes to mind is there's this quote that I saw on Instagram a little while back that was like, your fat friends don't want to hear how you don't want to look like them. And I think there is a start to unpack that. I think it starts with, what is scary about being fat? What are you scared of? Like, I mean, I think there's real repercussions to being fat in this world, but not because I'm fat, but it's because people hate fatness. And I think there was another story that I think about where I had a friend who, we were doing a series and they wanted to learn how to drive a stick shift, and I have a Jeep, and I wanted my friend to be able to learn how to drive a Jeep, and we were talking about it, and they couldn't get to a space where the Jeep was accessible for them to drive. And there was a moment where both of us internally sat there, and that was because of their size, to name, and they were down on themselves. And then they said, I had to take a moment and think about that it's not my fault this Jeep wasn't made for me. Like, this is my body. And I think we need to start questioning, rather than questioning ourselves, because when we turn that hatred and that fear in on ourselves, we give the rest of the world the power to dictate, so many things about how we navigate our world and the experiences that we have. And so I think when we flip the script and turn a question and say, well, this wasn't made for me, or how do I make this accessible for me, or who can I talk to? And it shouldn't all be on an individual, but I think as we start that framework individually, and I think as thinner size or smaller size people start to interrogate what their fear is of being fat, or what their fear is of fatness, or what that means if you're fat, I promise you, life does not. All I know is how to be fat. I've always been fat. No matter how many times I've tried, and life's pretty damn good in a lot of ways. I think people think you're not desirable, or you're not able, or you're not any of these things. And then I question, what does it mean to be able? And what does desirability look like? And when I think about liberation, I think about a lens of accessibility. And I think about, how do we make things accessible? And I think we learn a lot from disability politics and disability activists about how do we question what a universal design looks like, not just in the physical, but in the way that we approach medical care.
We're going to have to get into
people,
disability
and how we
justice
lean
at some
with
point.
compassion around making things accessible and universally there and for people. Which I think you can go big about, like, what does it mean to be a human, and how do we...
You guys know why, here is why I think that fat activism became a thing among the socialist left, because if you're talking about, if disability, if universal healthcare is the thing that they're pushing for from disability justice, because disabled people need to have access to certain types of care, and if they don't have access to certain types of care, then things are inequitable, and that's all because of capitalism, blah blah blah. And so the push for universal health care is to make sure that everyone, especially the disabled, has access to the care that they need. Well, disabled people are a relatively small portion of the population, right? But do you know what is a larger portion of the population? Pun intended. Fat people. There are a lot more fat people than there are disabled people. And so by grouping fat activism in with disability justice, you've exponentially, pun intended, increased the size of the population that's going to consider themselves under the disability justice movement, which is going to make the push for universal healthcare more powerful. These people never do anything without a reason. It always comes back to how can we best abolish capitalism with this method? And then as an extra added bonus, they get the gender binary stuff, because fatness apparently queers the gender binary. Oh, yeah, it's always opportunist. Yeah, everything is opportunist. They don't care about any of these things.
Care for each other. And I'm not going to take us there, but I think you got to start with compassion. You got to think about, how do we think about accessibility in every frame of, the physical, the emotional, and how we get to a place where fat isn't scary, and fat is fat, and fat is majestic, magical, and creates the most beautiful experience at the intersection of so many of our identities.
Wow.
that's all I got to say on that.
I think the fear piece is a biggie, right? I think that when I think about us as fat trans people, we are receptacles for other folks' fear and anxiety and aggression around the fact that they do not love themselves enough to permit themselves to explore things beyond the rigid gender that they have established for themselves because of the same messaging we've technically all received. And the same deal with fatness, right? That their fear of looking like us, right? And that we are receptacles for them to blow their trauma through on a regular basis. And that the lessons and the things that we have named in this space do not necessarily mean to say that we do not experience that fear or that restlessness or that frustration, but that we have at least overcome the initial hump of it to say, nope, I'm going to not just accept things at surface and fact and accept that my body can do more things than I was told that I could be. Again, looking past the fractals of that broken mirror and saying, actually, I see myself past this. I'm not going to replicate what's been mirrored to me as something that I'm supposed to do, and accept that prescription. So I could do this all day. I hate that you are all three in very different places. One day we will all be in the same hotel lounge, sipping our drinks of choice and having another version of this conversation and being, fat, trans, majestic humans in shared space. But this is the closest we could get
really
today.
want to go to that conference.
Y'all are absolute gems. When I think about
I really want to go to that conference where they're all in the same
leading
place.
the way, you are a high priority and the folks that I look up to so much. Appreciate folks tuning in for this conversation today.
All right, guys, we did it. We made it through the fat trans activism training. How's everyone feeling? Has everyone made it? Now that was quite something. It's like it really is telling that I've become so desensitized to these trainings that like I don't even feel the need to do commentary over it anymore because I'm like, yep, race, disability justice, gender activism, queer, trans, etc., etc. Oh, capitalism. Okay. It's like this was like intersectionality. Like this had everything. It had every possible ism all rolled into one presentation. I hope that was good for everyone. Well, Bot and Trendlin and my mystery source on Twitter have sent me a bunch of stuff to look at. I got a bunch of stuff I need to add to the Unwoke wiki because now we have our Unwoke wiki, which you can find at unwokewiki.com. It's a new thing that I've launched. There's not a lot in there yet, but basically the whole idea of the Unwoke wiki is like after I watch one of these things, I'm then going to go back and add entries to the Unwoke wiki so we can start tracking all these people, tracking the organizations, tracking the videos, all in one effing place. So I don't have like all these sources and spreadsheets and all this and stuff in Discord and stuff over here and stuff over there and people in my DMs and people sending me this way and my emails and all this stuff. Like the Unwoke wiki is going to be the perfect place where we're going to be able to track all this information. So I'm going to start inputting some of that into the system and doing a little bit of research at the same time. And of course, right now you can get the special exclusive January 2024 Plague Doctor t-shirt for the Unwoke Wiki, which is a special limited edition. There's going to be a new Plague Doctor logo every single month on the Unwoke Wiki. And you get there by going to unwoke.wiki. And it's going to be unwokewiki.com too at some point. I just haven't set up the redirect yet, so it doesn't work right now. But you can get there from that. You can get the Plague Doctor shirt. The Plague Doctor shirt right now is 24% off in the Unwoke art store. These are special limited editions because I want to try to fund this somehow by selling merch and cool stuff. And the Plague Doctor is just so cool. And so you can check that out in the Unwoke art store if you want to support the work we're doing. And you can also pick up other Plague Doctor merch right now. Carlin, I bought my husband 2 of your shirts for Christmas and he loves them. I'm so happy to hear that. That's awesome. Send a picture if you haven't already. I would love to see. We are going to have a lot of cool stuff in the Unwoke art store, including a special Valentine's Day design that I was inspired to make yesterday is going to be coming soon. All right, guys, as a reminder, I will be back in 2 hours. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to go, dare I say, eat some food, which apparently I'm not allowed to do according to the internet, but I do actually need to eat at some point because I haven't actually eaten yet today. It's 7:30 at night, so yay. So I'm going to go get some dinner. But I'll be back in 2 hours for Nothing Remotely Controversial. And if you haven't been to the show before, definitely come and join us today. And we're going to have a great time. I will see you guys in a couple hours. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye.